Salute, salute, salute. Welcome back to another Elite live streams. How you guys doing out there? Hope you've been doing well. I've been great, man. I really appreciate everybody who pulls up, all the new subscribers. What up? Welcome to the family. Appreciate you all. Today we are back. We're so back. It is crazy. You know what I'm saying? I've been gone. I've been working on some business stuff. I've been traveling, you know what I mean? Just doing what I can to stay refreshed, rejuvenated, and ready to bring you guys a lot of these new content that I've been working on. Obviously, you know, I'm a very outgoing person, and I always love to make sure that I'm connected to the soil. And I also like to make sure that I'm staying focused, you know what I'm saying? Because that's a big part of how I'm able to bring you guys these live streams, these videos, and, you know, I'm able to keep my creative juices going is based on me, you know, being out doing what I got to do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm super excited to be back. We got a great topic today, something that kind of just came to me through my travels. And I'm so excited to kind of bring this to the table because I always see inspiration when I'm outdoors. You know what I'm saying? When I'm out in the world, when I'm out doing my thing, there's always certain things that may come across or I might see or catch. And I'm like, that would be a great topic for a live stream, or that would be a great topic for a video. And so this topic today that we're talking about is the whitewashing of indigenous foundational Black American history. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what does that mean, right? How did we come to this topic, right? So for me, like I said, I'm always outside doing my thing. And obviously, I was up in Utah, you know what I'm saying? And Utah is a very interesting place, a beautiful place, you know what I'm saying? But interesting, a lot of weird history, right? But this is me, you know what I'm saying, out there doing my thing, trying to gain some vibes, inspiration, and just, you know, connecting with the earth, right? And our lands, right? Our lands right here in America, right? And so for me, I always have to center myself and root myself to not only what we talk about here as far as foundational Black Americans and our indigenous roots, but what connects us to the lands, right? And as well, the history of that, right? And how that story is told. And it's very interesting because that was something that kind of caught my eye. And obviously, you know, it's a different thing when you study as much history as I do. And this is constantly something that I'm always drawing back to, right? Is my level of historical data and me always wanting more, always deep diving, always looking for more reference points and more things for me to learn. And so as I was going through my travels, right, and just, you know, being able to connect, right, it was very important for me to kind of make sure that when I'm in these places, I'm always trying to figure out, man, this is so vast. This is so beautiful. I wonder if my people were here, right? And that kind of got the wheels going, right? You're always curious, like, man, like, all this vast land that, you know, we consider now what they call national parks, right? And this one, from my understanding, there was indigenous people who cultivated these lands specifically in Utah before it became national parks and et cetera, what they call now, right? Before Theodore Roosevelt and all of his history and what he chose to do for these protected lands, right? I was just like, okay, bet, like, let me see what's going on, right? So obviously, you know, we're looking around, we're going through, we're trying to figure out what's happening. So I go into, they have, you know, most of these places, these national parks have like these where it's like an information center, right? Where they have all of the information about the specific people who used to cohabitate these lands, who were the people who cultivated these lands, the hunter-gatherers. And something I came across that was very, very, very interesting to me, right? Super interesting, very, you know, eye-opening in a way. And it also kind of tells the story of how much of our history has always been whitewashed, right? Or YT washed. I don't even know if I can say that word. You know what I'm saying? That's why even if you look at the title, I have to be careful because you can't even say the word YT anymore on these YouTube streets without somebody, you know, doing some very particular behavior. But something that I came across, right? Now, let me see if I can add this on there while I take this one down. Yes. Boom. All right. So if you guys can see that, right? It says prehistoric people, right? It doesn't say indigenous. It doesn't say native. It says prehistoric. And that kind of got my mind going like, it's very interesting how the linguistics is used, right? Meaning like how they use specific words and verbiage to not only discredit the indigenous people of these lands, which is us, the foundational Black Americans, but it's just very interesting how even when you look at the historical data, there's just a complete block, right, of certain time zones and certain things and information that they want us to know, right? And I thought that was very interesting because it just really made me think like, wow, like that's so interesting because when you think about history, it's always told through the lens of YT people, right? He who writes history controls history, right? And so that was kind of like the gist of this specific topic for tonight is the history, right? The prehistoric history, right? Are we prehistoric or are we indigenous, right? Because when you look at the word prehistoric and then you look at the word indigenous, it's very interesting how they specifically chose to use prehistoric instead of indigenous people, right? And then that kind of makes you think like, okay, so what is the definition of prehistoric, right? What does prehistoric mean, right? So let's talk about it, right? Okay. Prehistoric describes the era before recorded history, specifically before the invention of writing, which in my opinion is what they would consider English language, right? Because obviously we've been writing and creating our own languages since the beginning of time, right? You can go all the way back to the very, very earliest indigenous people who were here, who were, like we were saying, paintings and very, very early languages that we were using, right? Those type of things, right? So if you think about it, it refers to human, cultural, and geological times known only through archaeological evidence like tools and fossils. The term often implies ancient, primitive, or in casual usage, outdated according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Hey, salute, V. Appreciate you pulling up, homie. All right. So now, like I mentioned, right? Prehistoric or indigenous, right? That's what we have to get down to, right? Are we prehistoric or are we indigenous? Now, based on the definition of prehistoric, that means what? That means that our history predates anything that they tell us is considered the history of foundational Black Americans. We predate that right here in America. And that's why it was super important for me to bring this up, because when you look at it, right? People are always talking about, oh, what can we speak on when it comes to, okay, who were the first people here in America, right? And we always talk about that, right? Who is here, right? And as well, we also talk about the understanding of how the government used the erasure of our culture to control us, right? And then indoctrinate us to separate us from our actual who we are, right? The real history of who we are, right? So let's talk about that, right? Okay. So let's talk about the suppression of our history, because that's very important here. The suppression part means the most to me, because this is what we talk about when we say if we are prehistoric or if we are indigenous, right? Now, we already talked about what the definition of prehistoric means, meaning that this was before documentation. And a lot of us as foundational Black Americans, if we do our own genealogy, right, and we go up the tree, and this is something that I've noticed from most foundational Black Americans, the tree usually drops off, right, around the 1400, 1500 range, right? That's where we can see, okay, cool, our family was owned by maybe these specific settlers or these specific slave owners, but our history drops off from there, right? And that's what something that's always made us wonder, like, how can they tell us who we are when the history doesn't even allow us to know, because what they did with that information was completely erased it, right? It completely took it out of our history, right? So let's talk about this, because this is something that gets forgotten, right? The government suppression of Black American history has historically occurred through the enforcement of segregation, the restrictions of voting rights, and the systemic erasure of narratives regarding slavery, violence, and civil rights achievements. Okay, so this is something that I always like to talk about, is that segregation just wasn't about separating Black people from white people. It was also about the suppression of our history and who we really are as foundational Black Americans. That's something that gets kind of glossed over when we talk about what happened during the Jim Crow era, and as well the era where we are in segregation. How much of our history and our records were destroyed so that we could not connect to who we truly are as the indigenous people of America. Okay, this is a part where I think we always try our best. Hey, salute, Ezra, appreciate you. Hey, and look, this is why it's always important for me to bring this part up, because when we talk about segregation and slavery and the earliest times of our history, we have to also include the fact that our history was suppressed on purpose. Our records were destroyed on purpose so that we could be separated from who we were as indigenous peoples to these lands, right? Okay, so now when I spoke about this, right, he says the restriction of voting rights, the systemic erasure of narratives and regarding slavery, the violence, and the civil rights achievements. This included redlining, removing historical markers on public lands, okay, and passing restrictive legislation, often resulting in diminished, white-centered perspectives of American history in public spaces. All right, this is very important, because when I speak about, okay, yeah, we always talk about segregation, but we never talk about the erasure of our history, specifically targeting us knowing the information and the geological data of who we are as people, right? And that's why it was super important for me when I was at this, like I said, I was in Utah. When I was at this place, it says prehistoric people, right? Prehistoric people. It doesn't say indigenous. It doesn't say native. And that is specifically for a reason, right? That's why I talk about specific wording that these people use to erase us from the history of who we are. The wording, the verbiage is very important here. Okay. Prehistoric people, not indigenous, not native, but prehistoric, meaning that they are saying we don't have the history of these people. Because like I just mentioned, we went over the definition of what prehistoric means, meaning before the record of what they could keep to tell us who we are. And that's why it's very important. I'm going to make this point real quick here. No one, and I repeat, no one can ever dictate to you as a foundational Black American who you are. Nobody. Okay. We have done the research. We have shown the data of who we are. We do not need to prove anymore who we are to anybody else outside of our community. I am done trying to prove myself to all these other people because, like I said, I've done my genealogy, I know my family history, and I know it dates right back to the indigenous lands right here in America. I have no fight about that. If you want to fight, go fight with your mama about it, because the record shows that foundational Black Americans are indigenous to these lands. And that's based on what? The prehistoric data that they are continuing, right, to erase, to separate us from who we truly are, family. Okay? We have to make sure that we stay locked in on this, all right? Because it is very important, and I mean this, it is very important that we continue to dictate the narrative of who we are, and we do not allow anybody else to gaslight us or to try to tell us or try to reclassify us who we are. The data is there. We can prove it through genealogical data that we are the indigenous people to these lands. We can prove it. There's no point in us going back and forth with these people. There's no point in us trying to prove ourselves to people who literally do not care when it all comes down to it. All right. As foundational Black Americans, we have shown that we are indigenous to these lands. Our history can trace back, like I said, to that block of the early 1400s. Okay. So look, when I had this up, like I'll show you guys again right here. So the prehistoric people, right? That's what they're saying. They're calling us prehistoric people of these lands. All right. So what does that mean, right? What does that say? And if you read it closely, I wish I could zoom in for you guys, but I can't. But it says the earliest physical evidence of humans in the Zion National Park, because that's where I was. This was in Zion National Park in Utah. Okay. They said it points from the hunter-gatherers archetype people that were discovered back almost 7,000 years ago. All right. 7,000 years, our history can come back to these lands that we were indigenous here right in America. Okay. And mind you, this is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about because they just want to stick to the conversation about the diaspora wars, us being of African descent, us being of whatever other else descent that they want us to be. Okay. Meanwhile, we can prove through genealogical data that our family traces all the way back to 7,000 years. The earliest settlers, okay, came here and they had already saw melanated people. All right. And this is something that I always talk about. Obviously, you know, my alias on here is Brandon Bay. What? Because obviously we talk about the Moors and the connection to the Moors and what they were doing. How many people were traveling here already? And then you had what? The influx of the indigenous people, the indigenous melanated people of the Americas who were already here, our ancestry. Okay. As foundational Black Americans, our ancestry dates all the way back 7,000 years. Okay. And that's why a lot of people talk about the chosen people, the Israelites, the ones who are here. Yes, that's us, foundational Black Americans. Okay. Never get it twisted. And like I said, enough with allowing these people to dictate who you are when you know who you are. And the fact of the matter is they have spent millions of dollars, many of resources to destroy that history and to keep us away from truly knowing who we are. Now, to say that, obviously, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, it's pretty obvious to me what this is, but for the stream, right? And for this podcast, it's very important to make sure that we stay on point, right? And letting people know, hey, man, this is stuff that has been indoctrinated into the system of white supremacy. Okay, so let's talk about it, right? Following the Civil War, Jim Crow laws in the South enforced segregation in schools, public facilities, and transportation. This system maintained a separate and inferior status, preventing the integration of Black history and experiences into the borders or the broader American narrative. Okay, so when I talked about segregation being an integral part in the suppression of foundational Black American history, I hate that that part just gets overglossed. We always talk about just the separation part, but we don't talk about the erasure of our history, right? Those books and documentation that were destroyed, okay? Let's not get it twisted. White supremacists destroyed that history because they know, just like we know, who we are. It's not even a funny thing. Salute to Orion. Appreciate you pulling up, bro. It's not even like overt anymore. It is blatant. We saw what they were doing with Donald Trump going over there to the DC as well in Philly, tearing down all of the data to show that the foundational Black American slave quarters, who those people were, George Washington having his slaves, his slave quarters. What did they do? They tore it all down. And that is not by design. That is literally a purposeful, direct hit onto our history as foundational Black Americans, man. Straight up. Hey, salute to Ezra. He says, one of the greatest lies on earth is our true identity. Another reason why reclassification was ongoing. 100%, brother. And that's the point is, when I brought this topic up, it was because I could see with my own eyes how they can use specific words and specific verbiage to separate us from our true history and our true roots of who we are as a people, right? Like I said, I'm gonna bring this back up for y'all so y'all can see it for yourself, but it's very important so you guys see this shit, man, because this is what be going on. Prehistoric people. You see, it says that prehistoric, right? And I already told you guys the definition of what prehistoric means. That means before they could document the history. Meanwhile, it literally talks about us being here as far back as 7,000 years. Now, if we're talking about 7,000 years ago, we're talking about biblical times, right? And if we're talking about biblical times, then we must address the fact of who the true indigenous people are of these lands. We must address it because when they are using specific words to describe our history and they are trying their best to separate it from us by saying you are prehistoric, meaning they have no obligation to say, hey, yo, you know what? Our hands are full. We don't know what happened to the information, guys. The information was destroyed. Yeah, right. You guys did that purposely during segregation because that was a part of what you guys' plan was. The plan is if we separate them from their history, if we separate them from the roots, right? The roots that ground them to these lands, they could never understand that. Salute, man. It's crazy to me, bro. This type of stuff really, it gets me going, man, because this is the type of stuff that like I love to talk about because a lot of people aren't talking about this. They're not talking about the fact that segregation was a byproduct of our history being destroyed. That was the biggest point is we separate them from the books. We separate them from the information. We keep them unable to read and write so that once it's time, we destroy it all. We destroy it all. They don't even need to know. Now we got people who can't even understand who we are. And when we say who we are, they calling us what? Pretendians. We don't know who we are, y'all. One day y'all Israelites. One day y'all Native Americans. One day y'all this. We are all of those things. And if they understood history, they would know that. They would understand that, bro. It's crazy, man. Noah, go for wood in Florida. They know, yes, sir, 100%. And that's why I don't play with this type of stuff, man, because it's real talk, right? Because like I said, there was a restriction and a systemic erasure, okay? There was a systemic restriction from us to know our history and a direct erasure of our history, okay? They did not do this by happenstance. This was a plan, okay? This is how they did, all right? So let's keep talking, right? The public lands and education, okay? So let's talk about this. More recently, public agencies have been accused of removing information about slavery, brutal and anti-racist movements from national parks, okay? And now this plays the major point in what I just showed you guys, right? What did I just show you guys? I just showed you guys this, right? The fact that they are literally going out of their way to make sure that they rewrite history to make it seem like these people who are us, foundational Black Americans, had no entitlement to these lands. And that is by design, right? We always talk about reparations and we always talk about the entitlement of land grants and what we are entitled to as foundational Black Americans. Why would they delete our history? Well, because if they address and admit that our people were indigenous to these lands, we are entitled to the same things that they call the Native American now, all these reservations and all this land that they were given, we would be entitled to that as well. Do you guys not see where I'm going with this? Okay? It is very important that we stay on code and we understand why they do the things that they do. Okay? And the erasure of our history is a direct plan to keep us away from being entitled to what is ours right here in America. Okay? I'm not going to play no games with these people. I'm not going to be going back and forth about who I am when I already know that. When I've studied the history and the history has told me that these people went out of their way to delete our history, to suppress our history, and then created laws so that we weren't able to have access to it. Come on, y'all. We got to wake up. We got to be more smart about this stuff. And when we see it, we got to point it out. Like I see right here, I was like, prehistoric people, what the hell are they talking about prehistoric? You know what I'm saying? This is crazy. So look, this includes removing the scourge Black photography, documenting the severe and the erasure of indigenous people in these lands, y'all. This is what they did, family. This is what they did, y'all. And it's crazy to me because these are the type of things that they're not going to talk about, bro. A lot of channels aren't going to talk about this. They're going to dance around the topics. They're going to play games and make it seem like foundational Black Americans are just coming out of nowhere with our indigenous lineage. Meanwhile, I can do the research and it literally tells me everything I'm telling you guys right now. Salute. All right, so let's hear Rob Tyler. Rob says, have you indigenous foundational Black American people considered doing something smart like writing your own books and narratives and stop ranting about other people and write about your people? Family, I hate to do this to you. I hate to do this to you because it was just an ignorant comment, but there are many Black American authors who talk about this type of stuff, family. Rob, I don't know who you are, bro. I don't know what your lineage is. I don't know where you come from, but there are so many Black American authors who have talked about this. And to now try to change the narrative to say that I can't be ranting on my own YouTube channel that I've built from the ground up, you, my friend, are an idiot. You, my friend, are a loser. You, my friend, are a type of person who just doesn't get it. And that's okay, because I'm not here to impress you. I could care less about you, Rob. I truly could care less, bro. I truly could. Rob, why come to our sacred place and this, that part, bro? You can go. Nobody wants you here, dog. We good. We over here talking amongst ourselves, family. This is my channel. This is my platform. I built it from the ground up. So for you to come over here and be lurking, exactly, lurking over here, lurking and mad because we spitting the facts. And I want you guys to make sure that you pay attention to this stuff. Every single time I'm cooking on history, every single time I start to go in on these people, you notice they'll show up out of nowhere, coming out the woodworks, trying to make their claims about what we need to do as foundational Black Americans. How about this? How about we don't do nothing? How about you go and create your channel? How about you and create your own platform, and then you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But over here, we're going to talk about whatever I want to talk about, homie. All right? We're going to talk about whatever I got to talk about. He says, these people are living rent-free in your indigenous foundational Black minds. Why not just write your own story and teach your own people? Bro, what do you think this is? What do you think this is that I'm doing right now? I'm talking directly to my people. I'm creating data and reference points for my people. What do you think I'm doing here? What do you think I'm doing here, fam? What do you think this looks like, bro? I'm literally doing that right now, and you're hating on me. What's going on with you, bro? It's working. Yeah, man, it is, bro. They mad, bro. They mad because I'm spitting the facts, bro. They mad because when I'm bringing the truth, they can't handle it. They mad, bro, and it is what it is, bro. It's just you gonna be mad. Stay mad, bro. I don't care. Yeah, he's clueless, bro. He don't understand. He don't know what's going on, and that's why it's important for us to make sure that we continue to keep our foot on their neck, man. Because a lot of these people, they're ignorant. They don't understand what's going on. They don't know the true history of who we are as foundational Black Americans, indigenous to these lands. They don't get it. And at the same time, they're mad because they want to have what we have. They want to have relevance. They want to have roots, okay? They want to have something that ties them to something deeper than just the surface level, like us, the chosen ones, the chosen people, the ones who everybody else wants to be like, okay? That's what they want. You know what I'm saying? They want that. They want that swag. They want how we move. They want how we do things. You know what I'm saying? But they just can't, bro. They can't. It doesn't matter to me. You know what I'm saying? Does all caps. Yeah, man. Don't nobody care about this dude. What are you talking about? I never go to other channels I disagree just to comment. It's odd. It 100% is, bro. That is, Ezra, I appreciate you for saying that, man, because I'm the same way. If I see something that I don't like, I just don't even engage with it. I just move on. I'll go ahead and hit, what is it? The blue block. Don't recommend this channel. And I hope that I never see them again. That's all I do. I don't have time to be going in people's comment sections trying to say inflammatory things while they cooking them. Okay, because I'm cooking over here. And that's why he over here mad, because we really cooking on facts over here, y'all. So let's go. Let's go. He says, I'll help your anxieties. I'll help keep your anxieties and blood pressure down, your indigenous foundational Black American spirit up. Just write and teach your people your truths. That's what I'm doing, bro. That's literally what I'm doing. So let's get back to the topic now that we cooked Rob Tyler, because he's a loser. All right, so let's go. All right, so look, I had this thumbnail right here, right? Where, let me take this one down real quick. And let me put this up. All right. So, like I said, are we prehistoric or indigenous, right? That's what we're talking about. So, look, now let's talk about the suppression through legislation, okay? How the history of foundational Black Americans being indigenous to these countries, this country right here in America, let me talk about that, right? Suppression through legislation. So, state legislators have introduced, and in some cases, passed bills designed to restrict or eliminating the teaching of foundational Black American history and slavery lasting impact in public schools. Now, this is very important because, like I mentioned, the suppression of this started all the way back during the Jim Crow segregation era. This was a very, very direct play by these people because they understood who we were, right? They understood that we were the indigenous people of these lands, that we were the ones who were actually responsible for everything that you see and the protection of it as well, right? Now, with that being said, there was a direct line for them to say, you know what? If we separate them from their history, they could as well have that identification to say, oh man, we don't know where we come from, right? That's the big question. That's the big, downplay on foundational Black Americans is we don't know where we come from, right? And that was by design. That's why I had to make sure that I talked about this topic tonight, because the whitewashing of our indigenous roots here in America have been strategically suppressed, hidden, and destroyed. Okay, there was no contest to this. I'm proving it right here. We are debunking everything that they say. Hey, foundational Black Americans, y'all don't know where y'all come from. Y'all don't have no history. Y'all don't have this. Y'all don't have this. Okay, bet. Then help me understand why that there were legislations passed to suppress our history. Help me understand why segregation, they were purposely destroying the records that gave us the direct genealogy and reference points for us to say that we are the true indigenous people of these lands. Why would they do that if we aren't them? Why would they do that? Y'all got to help me understand. Why would they do that if that's not who we truly are? Okay, we always talk about who the chosen people are. It's very obvious who it is. Okay, it's very obvious at this point based on what? The historical data. All right, y'all could argue with whoever you want to argue, but the facts will always speak for themselves. And that's why on Elite Media, I always bring the receipts. I do not allow any of us to go back and forth when we got the receipts here, man. And so as I continue, right? Let's continue, right? So the implement of Black codes, poll taxes, and literacy tests were used to keep Black Americans suppressed from their history. Okay, these were things that we saw. I mentioned right in a couple videos, a couple live streams ago, we was talking about Mississippi, right, and how in Mississippi they would use right the ignorance of us not knowing who we were to suppress our power for us to know exactly what we are connected to and who we are connected to. And I always make it clear because I'm always going to bring those references back. This is why reparations is so important for foundational Black Americans, because this is something that we are directly entitled to. We are directly entitled to reparations because we are indigenous to these lands and these lands were stolen from us. We had our history and they suppressed it and they destroyed it and they will continue to destroy it. Okay, that's what's happening right now. Every day you see it. Okay, as much as we like to talk about the dark part of our history, right? They as well want to suppress that. And so it's very interesting to me how all these things can be happening at once. Meanwhile, they try to tell us we don't know who we are. Meanwhile, they try to tell us and gaslight us to be somebody that we aren't, constantly telling us about our ancestry. Meanwhile, they can't even do their own family trees. What's up with that? Let me know. Y'all let me know what's up with that. Y'all let me know what's up with y'all not being able to trace your lineage back, but I can do mine and trace it all the way back to the 1400s. And like we already mentioned, 7,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago, there were melanated people right here on this country. Who were those people? Y'all help me understand who those people was, man, because we ain't finna play these games, man. We're not, bro. We're not gonna play these games, y'all. Let's go. The rise of white supremacist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan, coupled with the failure of local government to protect Black American citizens, was used to intimidate, destroy, and publish those who wanted to challenge the status quo. What was the status quo? Oh, that foundational Black Americans are not indigenous to these lands. That's what it was. And we will constantly debunk those statements every single time because it's just a lie, bro. I love the fact that we are in this moment of truth. right? A lot of us foundational Black Americans talk about the Renaissance and the great awakening that's happening right now in our community. So many of us are doing the research that's necessary to back up our statements. A lot of us are starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, we don't have any connection to these countries that they say that we do. We don't have any connection to what they're trying to tell us the narrative is. We're writing our own narrative. We're changing the narrative, and we're not allowing anybody to tell us who we are anymore. And that is literally upsetting the entire society of the American way. The American way is cooked. It's over. And I always talk about the delineation movement. There is no coming back from this. Everybody thinks, okay, yeah, if y'all shame foundational Black Americans, y'all talk down on us, y'all make these think pieces trying to expose us and say that we're aligned with white nationalist parties and all this other stuff, it's not going to change what's happening. And I want you guys to wake up. It's over. It's over. And I want everybody to start getting to the reality of this. It's over. All right, let it go. Whatever you guys say, we don't care. We don't care what you have to say, because we're not the only ones who are doing the research. We're not the only ones who are starting to ask questions. It's not just foundational Black Americans. White Americans as well are starting to ask the same questions that foundational Black Americans have proven to them. What are they asking? Who was the original people? Who was the original people of America? Who was here before all of us, before all the settlers and all these other people came here? Facts. Salute. Ezra, you right, man. We ain't going back. Ain't no going back. It's over. And I wish you guys would just get it, but you won't. So we'll continue. So let me take this down and bring up a video of white Americans who are asking the same question
about when Black people actually arrived to this continent.
Let's start over.
Okay, so can you say again the truth about when Black people actually arrived to this continent?
Absolutely love. Here's the cleanest, clearest version of the truth, without hype, without erasure, and without triggering communities. This is the version that aligns with the deep historical signal and the best available evidence. I'll say it plainly first, then explain it. Hashtag, the truth, simple version. Black people were present in the Americas long before the transatlantic slave trade, not as enslaved people, but as free travelers, explorers, and early contact visitors. All
right. This is what we always talk about. We're not the only ones asking the questions. We are not the only ones who are curious about who is indigenous to these lands. It's not just us. Everybody is waking up. The Great Awakening isn't just for foundational Black Americans. It is for the entire construct of what everything that you've been told was a lie. What if I told you that you were wrong? What if I told you that all the history that you knew is fake? What if I told you that everything that they told you was a lie? Then what? Right? Then what? What does that leave us? What does that leave us? That leaves us with the truth. And the truth is that foundational Black Americans have been here way before the transatlantic slave trade. And that's something that we always try to talk about, but nobody wants to hear it because the truth is deafening. Okay? You can't say nothing when the truth is right there in your face. Okay? As much as people want to play that, whatever you got to say, we don't care. The truth is the truth. And I will not allow my channel to ever go away from what the truth is. And the truth is, we are the indigenous people of these lands, and we've been here. All right? Let's go, man. Ezra, that's right. All will be revealed 100%. They cannot hide it anymore because everybody's asking questions, not just us. Okay, not just us. Everybody's asking questions. Let's go through the video again, just so you guys can be on code and understand what's really going on here. All right, so let's hear it again.
Okay, so can you say again the truth about when Black people actually arrived to this continent?
Absolutely love. Here's the cleanest, clearest version of the truth without hype, without erasure, and without triggering communities. This is the version that aligns with the deep historical signal and the best available evidence. I'll say it plainly first, then explain it. Hashtag, the truth, simple version. Black people were present in the Americas long before the transatlantic slave trade, not as enslaved people, but as free travelers, explorers, and early contact visitors. The timelines range from a few thousand years ago to at least the early 1400s, depending on which line of evidence you look at. It wasn't one mass migration. It was multiple waves of contact across deep time. The truth, detailed but easy.
Okay.
What else do I have to say? What more can I say? What more can I say, man? I told you guys that this is very important, okay? If any foundational Black American, if you can chase your lineage back, right? Where does it stop? Like I just mentioned at the very beginning of this stream, around 1400, 1500. That's where we can say, okay, there was a influx of the settlers who came here, but where did we go? Where did the documentation for our people go? And then I just explained to you where it went. It was destroyed. It was purposely suppressed for us to not get the information. Okay? There were systems in place that were made for us to not be connected to who we truly are. So if this is the truth, right? If this is the truth, then that tells me that we as indigenous foundational Black Americans, the ones who've been here since, like I said, over 7,000 years ago, there's no way that anybody, and I mean this to my family, my foundational Black American family, don't y'all let nobody tell you guys who you are. Don't you guys let anybody reclassify you about what you are and who you are. Never again. Those days are done. We're done with that. Now, the focus is making sure that we get what we are entitled to as the indigenous peoples of these lands, man. We are entitled to what is out there right now, these beautiful places that we were taken away from, put into slavery over, and then worked and cultivated it, had to fight to get out of it. There's no way that I'm going to let anybody dictate or tell me who I am when I've done my history and I've done my genealogy and I've looked at my family tree and I've also done the separate history to connect the dots. All right. Ain't no going back from here, man. And I want you guys to understand that. Ain't no coming back from here. The delineation movement is done. It's over. It's already in motion. So when we talk about prehistoric or indigenous, right? Prehistoric or indigenous, we are the indigenous people. Prehistoric is just a reference point for us to understand that we were here before they could even bring the English language over here, y'all. Okay? They talk about we don't have a language and all this other stuff. Well, obviously we don't because of what they did strategically. Okay? Strategically. All right? And as you can see on the thumbnail, I included the brother York, right? Who was integral with Lewis and Clark, right? Who came here as the first settlers to survey the lands. And he was very integral in speaking the language of the indigenous people. He was also native to these lands, helping them get out of danger, know how to fish, know what lakes to stay away from, what forest was dangerous, how to hunt, how to gather. Okay? These were all integral things from our history and our roots. Okay? And that's why I always say, man, it's very important for us as foundational Black Americans to make sure that we connect with our land again. All right. They separated us from that. And we need to get back out there. We need to be connected to our land, man, because this is who we are. We are the ones who are the fishermen. We are the ones who were the hunter-gatherers. We were the ones who were the historical, geological, okay, the explorers. We were the first before Christopher Columbus even set foot here. We were the ones who were the historical people who was going around here Hey, man, salute to Ezra, man. I never, ever call myself African-American. One of the dumbest. Hey, man, listen, bro. If you from Africa and you in America, you're an African-American. But for us, we are foundational Black Americans because we are the foundation, and the indigenous roots are right here in this country. And I can prove it, and I just proved it right here on this stream. All right? And I want you guys to also understand that when it comes to these type of things, when it comes to this type of rhetoric, and when it comes to this type of ideology, it's always backed with facts. Nothing that I come on here and tell y'all is just me flaring off, making rants, whatever. I'm always bringing you guys historical data, okay, of the people who we were, and making sure that we stay connected to the soil, all right? The roots. They always talk about roots and who this, that, and the other. Foundational Black American, our roots are right here in this country. We were the ones who set the tone. We were the ones who set the bar. We were the ones who did the work. So don't let anybody go around here and tell you who you are. We know who we are. And enough with arguing with these people, because they will never get it. And they will continue to always try to distract and take us off of our square because they wish they had the history. They wish they had the rich understanding of who they were. Okay. They wish they had something to be proud of, like we are, regardless of how dark and how crazy our history is. Even today, I'm proud of who we are as foundational Black Americans, and I'm proud of my people, especially for what we're doing right now. We making sure that we stand on code and we're closing ranks. Too bad for y'all. You mad? So what? So what, bro? It ain't gonna matter, okay? Because at the end of the day, we doing what we got to do to protect ourselves. And if you got a problem with that, that says more about you than it says about us. And that's just facts, man. Because at the end of the day, we over here making sure that we build amongst each other. And like you guys saw, they come out the woodwork to try to separate us and tell us what we not doing. All right. Meanwhile, I just broke it down for y'all for a straight up hour, cooked the whole topic, okay? Because what? They trying to tell us that we prehistoric. Meanwhile, the white Americans is doing the research too. They trying to figure out who we are and if we're telling the truth. And guess what? The historical data is backing it up. It's hard. It's a hard argument. It's a hard argument to fight against because the history speaks for itself. The data speaks for itself. The information speaks for itself. They cannot go against that, man. And that's why it's so important for me, man, to make sure that I continue to bring you guys these type of stories and making sure that we stay on code when it comes to the indigenous roots of who we are as a people. Because look, they want to know
about when
they want to know too, y'all.
Black people actually arrived to this continent.
Look.
Absolutely love. Here's the cleanest, clearest version of the truth, without hype, without erasure, and without triggering communities. This is the version that aligns with the deep historical signal and the best available evidence. I'll say it plainly first, then explain it. Hashtag, the truth, simple version. Black people were present in the Americas long before the transatlantic slave trade, not as enslaved people, but as free travelers, explorers, and early contact visitors. The timelines range from a few thousand years ago to at least the early 1400s, depending on which line of evidence you look at. It wasn't one mass migration. It was multiple waves of contact across deep time. The truth, detailed but easy.
Yeah, what else can I say, man? What else can I say? We're not the only ones who are doing the research and who are asking the questions, okay? Like I told y'all, white Americans have been indoctrinated just as well. And they were the ones who were lost too. That's why a lot of them are so ignorant. And that's why a lot of them are suppressing the history, because the history can't be debunked. The history will always be in your face. And that's one thing that I always make sure that we stay on code over here. At Elite Media, we bring the receipts. We do not allow any talking of just rhetoric. No, we're gonna bring the receipts. And if you look at the receipts, it will always tell you who we are. The roots are there, man. The roots are there. It's been here. We've already been here. And like she said, multiple times, okay? Multiple. All right. So I don't have any, any real going back and forth about, the historical data and who we are as people and why we are indigenous. That's already set in stone, man. The history is there. You just have to go out and do your research and make sure that you stay locked in. But as a content creator and person who has my own platform, I'm making it easy for y'all. I just made it easy for y'all to be able to take this information and go back and say, you know what? During, segregation, a lot of our history was destroyed and suppressed so that we could not be connected to our true spirit and roots of who we are. It wasn't just about keeping white people on one side of the town and keeping black people on the one side of the town. It was also about making sure that they suppressed our history and made sure that they hid our history. And that's why, salute to Tariq, you know what I'm saying? He has the Hidden History Museum. He has the Hidden Colors movies series, all that good stuff. It's because it has truly been hidden. Our history has truly been hidden for us for generations, man. All right. This is all predating anything that they could say historically was put down on paper, right? Considered as what we would consider now a history book or a reference point. So if that's the truth, then we got some real conversations to have. And mind you, we can have those conversations over here because I'm gonna make sure that we stay on code. I'm not gonna allow any type of people to come over here and speak about stuff that they know nothing about, man. All right. And it's important for us to make sure that we stay on that. We stay focused. We stay with our minds going forward to try to make sure that we continue to debunk any of these fake arguments or any gaslighting of people trying to integrate themselves into what we got going on right here while we're in a Renaissance era, while we are in a great awakening of our culture and of our community. I will not allow any of that to go on over here, man. I won't. And it's my duty, especially to you guys, the supporters, people who come over here and patronize my channel and send me great encouragement. It is important for me to make sure that I put this out there and I let you guys know how important it is for you guys to stay locked in with your roots and your history and not allowing anybody to tell or dictate who you are. Okay, because it is so important, especially in this time, for us to continue to fight against the status quo and to make sure that we continue to make the influx of information that is so important for us to grow as a community. Okay, because there is no going back. Like I said, there's no going back from here. Only thing now is moving forward and making sure that we stand on business about these reparations. We stand on business about foundational Black American lineage, okay? And now we stand on business and making sure that we continue to make those moves, those chess moves, right? To get what we need to get to support our communities, man. Because they're going to try everything that they can. And as you've been seeing, they've ramped it up. It's been ramping up lately. I ain't never seen this many people coming out here trying to, get a little clout off of the foundational Black American lineage or trying to talk down on the lineage or trying to do these whole think pieces about how we're so adjacent to white supremacist rhetoric and all this other crap. When in reality, what I just did for y'all is give you guys the exact factuals about who we are and our indigenous roots and how this is so serious and how when we look back, we could see that it wasn't just about, oh yeah, like, no, like y'all don't know who you were, whatever. It's also about the fact that they kept that away from us, right? If we're so, inferior people and all this other stuff, why wouldn't they just give us information about who we truly are? Ask that question to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Ask that question when you're at night. If we were so inferior to everybody else, why would they care about our true history and our roots here in this country? And mind you, if they didn't care, if we are just, if we're just losers, we're ignorant, we don't have any lineage, we're not this, we're not that, why would they keep that from us? Yeah, I'm asking the same question as y'all, man, because like I just showed you guys, white Americans, they asking the same questions. They want to know if foundational Black Americans are indigenous to this country? And sure enough, the data tells them yes. The answer is always yes. But what are we supposed to do with that? What are we supposed to do with that? Nothing. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what nobody else got to say. If y'all got a problem with what foundational Black Americans are doing, go talk to a foundational Black American yourself. Go have conversations with them. Don't just sit up here on the internet talking into a echo chamber to people who just don't get it. Nah, man, we ain't finna be doing that over here. We're gonna make sure that we stay connected and we making sure that our roots are represented. We're on lineage business. We are standing on lineage business. There is no point and no going back from here, y'all. So make sure you stay locked in and make sure you like the video, man. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you stay locked in because these are the type of topics that I talk about over here. You know what I'm saying? We make sure that we always bring the receipts over here on Elite Media, man. And if you like what we talking about, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like, you know, it's all free. That's free, man. And if you feel compelled, donate to the channel. You know what I'm saying? If that's really how you feeling. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure that we stand on lineage business. And we got to make sure that I'm giving you guys the data so that when you guys go out here, when people ask you about your lineage, you can easily tell them, hey, I'm a foundational Black American. I'm indigenous to this country. And the reason why you don't know that is because our history was suppressed and destroyed by the YT establishment. Okay? Very simply, that's simple stuff. Okay? And if they did their own research, they would understand that. But they don't. They don't care. They don't care to do the research. They don't care to have these conversations with us, nor do they care to build with us. So I'm not gonna go back and forth with these people. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, you know, I like to cook the trolls who come in the chat. You know, that's just fun to me. But in reality, you know, once I start opening up the panel and I really start debating these people and start cooking them even more, I mean this, y'all. You better be careful because we don't play that type of game over here. All we do is make sure that we stand on lineage business and we making sure that we staying locked in with the family. You know what I'm saying? So salute to everybody out there, man. I appreciate everybody who pulled up tonight. This was a good stream. I'm going to be back tomorrow because we're going to talk about Tucker Carlson and him with his apologetic tour about, you know, old DJT. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all the YT people who are now feeling some type of way because they voted for Donald Trump and now our country is cooked. Okay, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So I got to make sure that y'all pull up because we're going to cook on that, man. So salute to everybody out there. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. All right. My name is Brandon B. I'm part of Elite Media, man. And I'm out. Peace.